Alrighty, welcome back everyone. It is Laughin' Games here. I'm back with another Starcraft 2 2v2 cast, and I just can't get enough of these matches. So big shout out to you, Thermal, for putting on these cups, as he's done for a while now and is setting up a very big circuit. But I'm excited to tell you the teams for this match. In the bottom right, we have got Clem-Trigger once more going to be taking on a very cool team. It's going to be Lambo and Harstem. So another PVZ, or another P and Z team, going to be taking on the TNP. And we are on Emerald City for this match. So ladies and gentlemen, before we get too far into this one, make sure to go ahead, click that like button if you haven't already, as it goes a long way to helping these videos get out there. Leave a comment down below saying more 2v2. Let me know whether you want to cast if you want me to cast more SC Evo 1v1 matches, as that is genuinely something that I'm trying to decide sort of with the new channel, as I want to provide a variety, but I'm not sure if anyone's too interested in me covering like pro matches that have already been cast, so finding up-to-date replays and stuff is a bit of a challenge. But I may cast some 1v1s here and there, but then I'm like, oh, I could just cast SC Evo. There is lots of options when it comes to StarCraft 2, thankfully. And so we do have a best of 3 here today, so the first team to win 2 matches in 2v2. And we've got a scout going down for both Protoss. It's just a hard rule in 2v2 at this point that the Protoss scout, that's the rule, apparently. So, as Harstem scouts on out, Clem and Trigger are both going for expansion. Same with Harstem and Lambo. Nothing out of the ordinary if we pull up the production tab. The CC timing for Clem is a little bit nice, though, as Trigger once more delayed his own economy a teeny tiny bit to build the gas for Clem, which saves them net resources as a team, because it saves Clem's SCV from having to build that gas. It's a very cute little play by the red team, something that they seem to do every single match. So they've got quite good coordination. Harstem does send in a scouting probe. It does get killed off, though. And so that's -1 probe, the first unit to die in the match. Harstem, behind this, is going for a Stargate, so this could be very interesting, as Clem and Trigger sometimes do go Mass Phoenix, so there is potential for Phoenix versus Phoenix. As I say that, though, Trigger is going into a Twilight Council, so Harstem will be the air guy, and he will have a counterpart Protoss playing ground, probably Blink Stalkers. That seems to be the meta. You don't see a lot of charge, adept timings, that kind of thing in 2v2 for the most part. Fairly straightforward builds. That being said, Harstem and Lambo can be a bit of wild cards, so who knows. And the exciting part about watching them is that they're both very good players, even if they do change it up a little bit. So Harstem goes for 1 Oracle. We'll see if he goes for a second or a third. It is a risky thing committing to more than 1 Oracle and then just not going into Phoenix, because if your opposing Protoss is building Phoenix, you will just be way too far behind in that count. Behind this, though, we've got Lambo being incredibly greedy. I really dig this, going up to a fast 4 bases. And this is a really good play, I feel, against Clem-Trigger. Clem-Trigger can be quite greedy in these matches, and so Lambo just saying, hey, yeah, give me 4 bases right now, is awesome to see. Harstem is going for Phoenix. He'll be on most of the defense while Lambo powers up. That being said, maybe Lambo's just going to go into Mass Ling, Mass Baneling, that kind of thing off his fast 4 hatcheries to have lots of larvae. You never know till the players start producing things. Hallucinated Phoenix comes on in for Trigger, sees the 3 bases, but doesn't know there's a 4th, which is quite a big deal. And oh, look at that, I'm correct, as Lambo does fire up +1 melee on the way. He is making a lot of lings already, so that 4th hatchery may not be mined at for a while. It could just be used to feed lots of lings out. And that is definitely one way to potentially kill your opponents early on. If Harstem sends in the Phoenix to lift up some units and deal with the air units, and then Lambo just has mass lings on the ground, there is real opportunity there. And of course, there isn't much of a wall for Clem-Trigger, and Ling Floods are still pretty good, last I checked in Starcraft 2. Presently, though, it is just 26 lings for Lambo as he fires up a lair, so not all-inning anything like that. I think an all-in would have been very powerful in this position, as it's like only 8 stalkers out for Trigger. Lings do come on in for Lambo. They are going to get a wraparound on the battery and the Nexus, although they will not kill it. A very early retreat for Lambo, which I'm a big fan of. We do have a Baneling nest on the way. The lair's producing, so he'll be able to get Baneling speed on the way out. And these two players have come to an agreement, Harstem and Lambo, saying, I'm going to build anti-air, you're going to build anti-ground in the form of lings, which is very cool. Harstem does come on in, trying to have a bit of a quick move, get some damage done by lifting up the stalkers of Trigger and then having the Oracle do some work, although he did, I believe, only get 5 probes, maybe even fewer than that, as I didn't quite catch that. Observing 2v2 is hard, ladies and gentlemen. I really try. I get my practice in casting bot games, but it is still not easy. Lings are running forward. That stasis ward is hostile, though, and look at this. In comes Harstem, lifting up a lot of the stalkers as Lings get a wraparound, but the Marines of Clem are able to get lots of damage off, and so the effectiveness of that attack wasn't the highest. Looks like another Phoenix pathing in does get shot down by Clem. Quick reaction. Harstem is grabbing quite a few SCVs, though, on his way out, but still 2 dead Phoenix. 19 dead Lings, though, isn't that many to keep the heat on their opponent. 3 dead Stalkers, 1 dead Sentry. So not bad trades for the blue team. And if we do look at Lambo's economy, it is very, very formidable. With a whopping 80 drones out already, he has surged up in the economy. Clem is on 3 bases, which is good for Terran. But I'd take an 80 drone Zerg any day of the week against that. And Lambo's not just going up to 5 bases, but 6. So he's just going to have so much larva at his disposal. The Zerg isn't just sticking on to Ling and Bane, though. He is producing Hydras, getting out muscular augments. Baneling speed is on the way. Harstem is producing more and more Phoenix, getting out mass Stargate. Look at this, though. Clem and Trigger are going to be moving across the map. The best Protoss trick to counter mass Phoenix from your counterpart is to go Archons. Phoenix can do literally nothing against that. And so while Lambo is getting a run by, while Harstem is getting some harassment done with his Phoenix, a big attack is coming forward for Clem and Trigger, and they are just charging on in. Harstem's 3rd base is going to be extremely vulnerable. He has already pulled the probes away from that location. Phoenix are coming from behind trying to pick off some of the medivacs, but Clem is putting off a lot of fire on those Marines. Lambo is making Banes. He's got many, many more Lings being produced. +1 armor about to finish up for the Zerg. It's almost important to wait for that, and it is done now. There's also Banelings, Baneling speed, 23 of them in total, which is a good amount. Of course, the Archons will be good against the Lings and Banes, though. And so the Phoenix might be a bit of a weak link here, as Clem just has Mass Marines, which is good against Phoenix. Trigger has Archons, which are literally the best thing against Phoenix, I think it's safe to say. Lambo is setting up a 6 around, though. Baneling gets a connection on some of Clem's Marines from behind, forcing the red Terran to lift on up. Lings and Banelings do chase away the medivacs of Clem. Phoenix are pursuing, going to be able to kill that off. And now Harstem and Lambo are going to be able to push on in. Harstem is just the Phoenix still, but man, oh man, Lambo has a lot of units. 23 Banelings, 12 Hydras. There is another Archon morphing on the front lines, but it may not live that long. The Phoenix are coming on in. If they can lift up the tank, maybe pick off the medivacs of Clem, that would be huge. Trigger is trying to respond. He does have his Archons forward, so they're going to absorb a lot of the Banelings, and this is a Zerg off creep, so Clem can micro against this. Looks like the blue team will be forced away. The Phoenix of Harstem still are doing lots of work, though, lifting up tons of Clem's workers, as so far Clem has lost 13 SCVs, Trigger has lost 16 probes. That is definitely more than their counterparts. But all in all, a solid defense by the red team for now. But they are still in a very dicey position. Trigger, he's making more Archons, but his supply is incredibly low, 26 supply, whereas Harstem just has 18 Phoenix and is now going into carriers, which is the natural transition away from these Phoenix. Give him a couple of minutes to make a few rounds of carrier production. That will be very, very good for them. A mothership on the way as well. Harstem is spending all his money into these air units. Phoenix are flying around, lifting up units for Harstem, picking off medivacs as well. That is very big. And yeah, things are looking pretty good for the blue team. Lambo still on an incredible economy with 87 drones out right now. He's got lots of Hydras, lots of Lings. And yeah, the blue team is just in a good spot. Lambo does move on in for an attack, forcing Trigger to abandon his base. Meanwhile, Banelings are rolling in at Clem's fourth. Clem is splitting against those Banes. Phoenix are flying around though, picking up whatever units they can, finding a tank. And now Clem and Trigger may be feeling pressured to go for a counterattack. So far, though, the blue team is still in a good spot because look at this. Lambo goes out, but then he goes back in to hit Clem's fourth base. This is going to force his opponents to attack. We do have a nice Zealot run by getting off for Trigger. I mean, it's really just hitting one of Lambo's bases. He cleaned up the other. A couple cannons are present for Harstem as the third base of the Protoss is under pressure. As once more the red team moves across the map, there is a counterattack going on by Lambo with only a few Hydras left at this point, so the blue team does need to pull it together to defend against this, but Harstem does have 3 carriers out right now. In another 30 seconds, he'll have another 3 out, which is going to be big. It looks like the blue team may lose another hatchery during this. Lambo has taken some harassment. Behind this, Trigger is on an amazing 80 probes, which is just a very high amount, going to allow him to have high production, but Harstem's air fleet is doing quite well. Lurkers are burrowing forward for Lambo. A beautiful time warp goes down from the mothership. Now the carriers are mostly out of interceptors, which isn't too useful, but those Lurkers are going to keep everything else away. Harstem is patiently waiting for those extra 3 carriers to get out. He really needs to be chrono boosting those if he does have the energy, and he's got a little bit of energy, so definitely wants to get those carriers out as quickly as possible. As the red team has seized momentum, they're now pushing towards the bottom left. Lurkers are burrowing for Lambo to lock this position down. He can always reposition those, but these players, they do have to be careful. They've got to fight together. Harstem's army is a little bit out of position, maybe going for a counterattack, and that is leaving Lambo to deal with all these Zealots, Archons, and Marines by himself. It is a lot of Lurkers to do so, but it's still just so much supply from his opponents. Clem is on 120 supply. He's got a whopping 71 Marines out against a Lurker composition. Lambo is electing to retreat just to hold the low ground, which is probably the mature decision to do here. We are seeing Harstem push on in. He's actually pulling his mothership back, probably for an escape recall. In case he does get overwhelmed. He is hitting the 4th base of Trigger quite hard. That's going to be a good economic blow, although Trigger does have the gold base mining. Harstem does too. And so some economic damage has been done. The blue team's holding on. And there was a bit of a counterattack by Harstem, but I do believe he recalled those units. And now the mothership is going to be under pressure. Tosses down a time warp before it dies. Phoenix have to come on in to help out those. Clem just stims forward with his strong 2-2 Marines, getting some damage done. AoE is the name of the game at this point, so I think Harstem may need to try and get out some Psystorm if he can. Lurkers are burrowing for Lambo, which is very big. It's not going to be easy for the red team to push into that. We are seeing Trigger blink with his stalkers to circumvent the Lurkers of Lambo and take a good fight. The Lurkers are just cutting so much of Clem's stuff up, but Harstem lost quite a few of those carriers. Losing 4 carriers is massive amounts of damage, and look at that, they do move up towards Harstem's precious golden 4th base. There is a single Lurker harassing, and looks like, I'm not sure what Harstem's pinging about there. Maybe the Phoenix and Lurkers moving on in to get some counter damage done, which they absolutely do need to do. The Lurker spines are harassing at this planetary, completely denying mining, which is huge. A scan goes down to clean that up. Scan and Zealots, good coordination by Clem and Trigger. More Lurkers are burrowed at the 5th base of Trigger. This is getting some nice economic damage done, though, cleaning out the gold base. We've got yet another Lurker burrowed out on the map, so the blue team is seizing some of the momentum back. The problem is Harstem's economy really has been gutted down to just 3 bases. He's producing carriers as quickly as he can, rebuilding his mothership, but he just doesn't have that high of an income. And so the blue team is in a bit of trouble. Lurkers are going to have to get lots of work done for Lambo, and they are, as they just killed off quite a few Zealots. Clem's mass Marines is such a fickle composition against mass Lurkers, as Lambo is just continuing to inch forward right now. Looks like Trigger is going for a very wise counterattack, though. Gonna catch Lambo out, not having anything to defend a few of his bases. Looks like the Protoss for the red team will have that gold base gutted for himself. Trigger does have another base mining, though, so he'll still be outperforming Harstem. And look at this. Clem is actually just going to stim on in on top of the Lurkers. Not all of them were burrowed. Trigger recalls from the Nexus right before it dies to perform a sandwich catching Harstem out of position, and all of Lambo's lurkers just got destroyed. That was the sickest play by Clem-Trigger. I can't believe it. That was so well executed. And oh my gosh, yes. That is how you play 2v2, ladies and gentlemen, coordinating with your teammates. Harstem is now having to be extra careful with his carriers. He's up to 9, which is a nice count, but he no longer has that big lurker backbone that Lambo was providing. The blue Zerg is probably going to take some more economic damage here. Harstem's going to try and help out. It's relatively even supplies. Harstem 92 against Clem's 103, Lambo 58 against Trigger's 76. It's not the biggest difference in the world, but the carriers are very far forward and they're rather unsupported. I mean, the interceptors are doing quite well for themselves. A great time warp goes down for Harstem. He does lose a lot of his interceptors, but he thankfully does have lurkers to fall back on from Lambo. We are seeing a Ling counterattack. Deny mining at Trigger's 4th base. Trigger did get up a 5th base, though, that was never cleaned up. That's giving him way more economy than his opponents. And Clem has just been kind of chilling on 4 bases for now. He does have an extra CC up, and look at this, Clem is pushing on in. Lambo loses that critical base, and even if Harstem could kill off that army, they'd still be in a very poor economic position. We'll see. Can Harstem's carriers come in clutch? He's quite broke right now, rebuilding all those interceptors that he lost. They are beefy carriers, though, with +3 attack shields as well. Lambo's got his lurkers on the ground. The red team is playing the less efficient composition, but they've been able to make some great plays with it. Lurkers are sieging for Lambo to lock this position down. Clem is moving forward with his tanks. Harstem's carriers are out of position once again, though, and if Clem-Trigger realize this, they can go in, and they do realize it. And look at that, a massive stim forward. Harstem has just got to be kicking himself for his carriers being so slow right now. There they come on in. I don't know if they can solo this entire army of Clem-Trigger, but if one unit can do it, it is mass carriers. He targets down one of the Archons. The Marines are coming forward. A time warp goes down. The time warp is so helpful for Skytoss, but right now the 3-3 Marines of Clem are doing so much work. The mothership is eating shots, but all the interceptors are dead. Harstem lost his 3rd base. They are broke as a joke right now, and it does seem that the red team is going to eke this one out. I mean, Harstem still has 12 carriers, but he barely has money to build interceptors. In fact, he quite literally doesn't. He's making 3 at a time, yet he needs many more than that. Now would be the time for Lambo to send over any money he can at all, because Harstem needs to make the most of those carriers. But with Clem maxing out once more just on his Marine style, it's such a risky style to play with this composition. Like, against lurkers, that is so risky to play heavy Marine, but Clem, he's fast enough to pull it off. They're now coming on in. Lambo's going to lose really his last mining base. He's got his 3rd up still, but that's starting to mine out. Counterattack by Lambo does deny Clem's 4th base. Clem will be mining out, however, he's got reinforcements coming out. Zealot's going to shut that down. And I think Harstem and Lambo are just running out of steam. Lambo has managed to rebuild, get up to 140 supply, which isn't terrible. Harstem's supply is just really terrible, though. Maybe they can take a big fight if the lurkers group up with all the carriers. Where are the carriers, though? They're on the other side of the map, and so the blue team once again seems to be a little bit disjointed. Clem-Trigger, they are pulling on back. Harstem's carriers are getting lots of work done, though, as they kill off the 4th base of Clem. The 5th base is actually floating away. That is a big counter stab. We do see Trigger, though, recall some of his probes to this location, or just pad them on over. Pardon me, I don't think it was a recall, but that was actually a really nice move by Harstem and Lambo, buying time. If you don't have an economy, you better darn sure make sure your opponent doesn't have an economy, and they've done a good job of that, at least to Clem. Clem's economy is quite low. Triggers, though, is still roaring away, so Harstem and Lambo are going to have to overcome that with good army efficiency, which lurkers definitely can do. I mean, it's mainly stalkers, so mass stalkers against lurkers can always go wrong, as the stalkers were forced because of Harstem's carrier fleet. They got to be so careful, though. But look at this, Harstem coming on in with the carriers once again. Looks like Clem is pursuing Lambo all the way home. Those lurkers are going to need to burrow to deal with the Marines, and they do, but Clem does walk away with a fair few of those. So that was a nice pick off. That's just Clem being quick with his reaction time saying, hey, you're not sieged right now. I can chase you down, actually. So incredibly well done. Harstem does elect to recall his units back to his base, which is barely mining at all. He doesn't even have that third base. Looks like Lambo is actually going to take it. Harstem does have all his carriers on the front, and Clem is alone. In comes Trigger, though, but man, oh man, carriers and lurkers is a very difficult composition to break if these players are in position. Harstem and Lambo, they took a few fights that were not the most optimal because they were kind of split up, and Clem-Trigger capitalized on that, but now they're grouped up. Time Warp goes down, catching so many of Clem's Marines in those lurker spines. We are seeing the tanks of Clem get some shots off on all of the lurkers, though. Trigger blinks forward, deletes the mothership, and the tanks are still shooting away. Lurkers will kill off all but one of those tanks. The rest of them are burrowing. Losing that mothership is a big blow. Lambo is mining a little bit. Supply-wise, though, things have got worse for the blue team. 75 and 35 supply against 116 and 94, so about 100 versus 200 right now. The lurkers are going to burrow. They're going to get some good spines off. However, Clem is mining still. Trigger is mining, and he goes in for a huge counterattack with his stalkers, just realizing that their opponent's army is so slow, and he kills the last mining base of Lambo. The carriers are moving forward for Harstem. He's rebuilding interceptors, and he does currently still have 12 carriers, but Lambo types out, Harstem types out. The counterattack seals the deal. GG, as the first game goes to Clem-Trigger. And yeah, we are just going to go ahead and load on into that next match, which if it's anywhere as exciting as that previous one, you know it's going to be good. And so away we go. Okay, into game number 2 between these awesome teams. Reclamation is going to be the map for map number 2, which definitely changes things up as the players' main bases are split up, but they do still have this general forward ramp. We've got Lambo seemingly trying to pull a trick out of his sleeve. Is there a gold base? Where's this drone going? No, he's just sending it out to scout, it would seem. A rare Zerg drone scout, unless they're going for a proxy hatch or something like that, which would be exciting, as 2v2 is very, very fun to watch when it comes to early game aggression, because there's a lot more potential. And oh my gosh, I think Lambo may be doing it, and he does go for the proxy hatchery. What is Harstem going to be cooking up behind this? Probably just gateways, right? As he does have one gateway on the way. Lambo, let's see, he's got the pool building. Will it be a Roach Warren next after that, or is it just going to be Lings, Queens, and Spines? I think it's got to be Roaches, because it is quite a distance towards those bases. Clem-Trigger behind this, they are going for a probe scout. As always, Trigger is in charge of that. Spawning pool on the way up for Lambo, almost done. Harstem, though, is committing to multiple gateways. He doesn't have one building on the other side of the map, but then he goes for a cyber core, so just one base, 2 gating it, a fairly common Protoss build. In goes Trigger. Does he check for the Zerg expansion? He hasn't seen it anyway. So they may be starting to get a little bit concerned. The Roach Warren is on the way up, but that wasn't identified. The double gas was identified, though, so they do know they're getting proxied. Clem immediately throws up a bunker in order to try and defend Trigger's Nexus. I think this would be the time that Clem delays his own base, and that's exactly what he's doing. No extra command center yet. Realizing how serious this proxy is, Trigger may be able to get away with getting this Nexus up, but I don't think there's any way that Clem could also commit to a command center and be safe. So, let's see, the Roach Warren about to finish up. Harstem is chrono boosting out his 2 stalkers. There is a proxy gateway going up for Harstem. Proxy robo, proxy gate. Now, I'm not sure if the timing for this is going to be ideal for the red team, because it's going to take those stalkers so long to get across the map, whereas Lambo's roaches are going to be out pretty much right away. And so Harstem's just going to have to scurry those stalkers across the map as quick as possible. Is he chrono boosting out Warp Gate? He does have chrono boost energy, but maybe saving it for a potential Immortal once that Robo is done, as 3-gate Robo Immortal can be a thing. Clem does have many SCVs pulled off the line. SCVs, oh gosh, I always forget. They can repair Protoss units or they can repair Protoss buildings. I can't quite recall which one it is. In comes Lambo, though, with this classic-style Ravager rush. Marines of Clem and Trigger have yet to pop out of this bunker to maybe dive on top of these exposed solo Ravagers, as Lambo brings forward another Ravager, and they just commit heavily to this rush. The Overlord is providing vision for the red team. In comes Harstem with his own Stalkers. He does have a Prism on the way behind this, so he'll be able to juggle his units. Clem and Trigger are very committed to the defense for this, with 2 batteries, a third one building, SCVs repairing the bunker. Harstem can skirmish with these Stalkers as often as possible, and really just his presence is helping Lambo prevent this rush from being shut down. As the Ravager count increases, the Corrosive Biles will increase in lethality. High ground vision is lost. That's actually a nasty supply block on Lambo, and Harstem is actually just shuffling his units into the main base, so going for his own play once again, except they're not striking together. That is a massive unpowering of the base of Trigger, though. Meanwhile, Lambo is trying to push into the main base of Clem. Clem has to pull his units, though. Stalkers and Sentries are trying to fight off the defensive units that Trigger has. The force field locked out 2 of the Stalkers, but the Prism does get pushed away. It's very low on HP, so Harstem will lose most of his units. We are seeing Clem come on, or Lambo, pardon me, come on in with his Ravagers, but there's 2 Cyclones out for Clem, which is very good. The Pylon is still remaining standing, and with Harstem losing all those units, that's quite painful. It's currently 5 Stalkers to 6, which is actually an advantage for Trigger, and so it does seem that the rush may have fallen flat. Harstem does have this Immortal out that definitely could help out, but we saw the red team kind of split up their army once again, which may not have been ideal. They may have been able to, say, apply more pressure to Clem or Trigger if they were together, but in this case, well, that simply wasn't the case. We do see Harstem warping in whatever he can, knowing they need to commit to this. Now he may be able to sandwich Trigger a little bit, but Trigger does have 4 batteries, so Harstem, Lambo are moving on in. 1 Pylon does get unpowered. That takes out 1 of the batteries. There is SCVs being pulled off the line, as there's plenty of Roaches and Ravagers still for Lambo. They're rather injured, though. Cyclones getting lock-ons. Corrosive Biles going down. Only 1 Cyclone remains. Harstem is warping in, reinforcing Stalkers to help on out. The Prism is staying alive. There's only a couple of Ravagers left for Lambo. The Cyclone gets a lock-on the Prism, so that is no longer going to be present to warp in units. Is there any more reinforcements coming? 2 slow Roaches wiggling across the map. Trigger and Clem are trying to hold on. It's looking a little dicey, though, as Trigger is down to 2 supply. That 1 Stalker. Clem, he is doing what he can with his Cyclone, though. Lambo does have a Ravager out that can still drop Corrosive Biles, but the 2 Cyclones are worth so much for Clem right now, as he has got good micro potential with them. And Immortal eats a lock-on, but it almost breaks. It doesn't quite break, though. That is huge. The Cyclone keeping the lock-on on that Immortal. Trigger knows he can pull some probes to try and make this defense happen. I don't know how this is looking right now. So far, with the worker pull, though, Lambo and Harstem are forced back. There's not that much left. The Immortal turns around to get a shot off. Another Prism does come out for Harstem. That will help out. But Lambo really just lost his snowball of his Roach Ravager count. He's got a hatchery on the way up behind this, accepting that they may need to macro, but I'm not sure they got enough damage done. But at some point with Zerg, you just have minerals because you don't have larva in order to spend that money. There's 4 Roaches out for Lambo. He's making a couple more Ravagers. Harstem and Lambo, they were almost able to group up, and there is still potential if we look at the supplies. It's quite close. Say maybe they can catch their opponents out, but look at this beautiful Cyclone lock-ons by Clem. Once again, I think the Cyclones were the MVP in this match. If they could, say, sandwich these units with Harstem's Prism, I'd say there's a chance. We are instead seeing Harstem load up his 2 Immortals and head to the main base of Trigger. Trigger has 3 Stalkers to defend this, which would normally get annihilated by 2 Immortals, but he does have 2 Zealots to help out with that, though, which is actually so smart. Clem almost produces a Viking, changes his mind for a Medivac. A Viking may have been nice to counter the Prism, but as time goes on, I think things are really just going to fall off for Lambo and Harstem as they are down in supply. Army supply is fairly even across the teams, but they're just not that grouped up. We are seeing Lambo try and get us around on the Cyclones. They are almost going to get caught. One of them does go down. Now the Marines are being caught. The 2 Immortals for Harstem are not here, though. They're going into the back of the base of Trigger. He's now got 5 Stalkers, though, to defend against this. The injured Immortal takes some shots first, And all in all, it does look like that Harstem and Lambo are having a tough time bringing their forces together to get the most efficiency out of them. If those two Immortals were there, and like, I know Trigger may have repositioned his units, but at the same time, maybe they could have found an attack angle, but it just wasn't meant to be. The Prism has to reposition. It's so injured right now. It's incredibly vulnerable. Lambo is trying to break forward. Harstem does have Adepts, which are definitely helping buffer. He's got another Immortal, and the tank does go down. Another tank. Cyclones come forward for Clem. Trigger repositions his units. Harstem does get the Immortals inside the main base of Clem, but Lambo is going to type out as his army gets cleared out. Harstem types on out. GG gets called. Incredibly well done by Trigger and Clem, showing us that they are 2v2 beasts, as always. Harstem and Lambo, it was very cool to see them play. I liked their unit choices and their strategy choices, but I think they just needed to group up a little bit more to really embrace 2v2, where you have double the firepower, and it's difficult for your opponent to have double the defense in one position. So a bit unfortunate there. It was exciting to see a cheese, but Clem and Trigger do take the series 2-0. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this one, click that like button. If you watched to the end and you're not subscribed, this is a new YouTube channel, so go ahead and subscribe. I'm putting up daily casts. Leave a comment down below. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching.